Remember in The Dark Knight when Harvey Dent said to Bruce Wayne, "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And it's a quote that has effectively been memeified over the span of the past 11 years, but it actually stands. There are many instances out there where people see themselves become the villain. And I think that even people who I potentially believe that they have the best of intentions will find themselves in a situation like that. Although this isn't necessarily one of those cases, because the outlet in question is an absolute trash heap, a dumpster fire full of social justice warriors. I can't even call them progressives because they're not, that are usually guilty of the same thing that they go after other people for. And that, of course, comes in this particular article here. ResetEra member threatens lawsuit over leaked discussions from secret Discord, coming in from oneangrygamer.net. Now, I'm not going to read you guys the article. It's a long article. There's a lot going on that thing, and I don't want to get threatened with no lawsuit either. The last video I covered off of One Angry Gamer got copyright struck by My Little Pony. So, it is what it is. That being said, the general gist of the story here is a woman by the name of Celine B. Sykes ended up getting into ResetEra's very super secret private Discord. Now, she explained that even by going in there, it was like this massive process that was a pain in the ass, a lot of verification, re-verification. People wanted to make sure that if you went into the super secret ResetEra Discord, you were on the legit level. You were 100% good to be there. Well, when Celine got inside, what she discovered, what she found, what she uncovered was a little bit disturbing for her. She came across conversations basically that, while not being sexual against children in nature, like, fantasies of what they want to do to kids, there were some questionable content being discussed in regards to lollies and pedestry and things like that she took umbrage with. So she collected a lot of screenshots and went to the owner of ResetEra, Solarium, whatever, it doesn't even matter, psychopath, and went to them and said, "Hey, listen, this is what's going on in your private Discord. I thought you should know about it. These people are clearly, something's going on." And his response back to her is basically, "Well, listen, accusations of this is major. It's massive, and you need a lot of evidence in order to make it stick, and these screenshots don't ultimately back it up." Now, one of the people involved in that particular screenshot grab, which, by the way, I am curious if there's any actual lawyers out there that understand wiretapping law, federal wiretapping laws. I know that there's many states where you cannot record someone's conversation without their knowledge or consent, the two-party states, but there are one-party states out there, and I am very curious whether or not this applies to private Discords, where it's not open to the public. You have to be invited in. It's considered a private space. Does leaking these particular photographs and screenshots, does that qualify for breaking wiretapping laws? I have no idea. Clearly, there's no case law that I'm aware of for this. There's no precedent set for this that I'm aware of. But I'm curious if that's a factor, because that could ultimately be what Lord Kano is attempting to threaten. That Celine is smearing him, is attacking him for things that he said in a private conversation while trying to insinuate that he has done something that he shouldn't have. And I understand why people would get upset at that accusation. That is one of the most horrible things you can ever be accused of doing, is hurting children. And having conversations about it, or having conversations about things that are kind of parallel to it or running the same circles of it without going into that full on situation, is definitely questionable. It's disgusting, and it's to be fair, it's gross. I'm sorry, it's gross. I'm gonna say, you want to call me an SJW because I don't like lolicon or shoulder? Fine, by all means. I don't give a crap. If you want to get mad at me for not liking images of young children in sexualized situations, it's not for me. Shouldn't be for anyone, quite frankly, but that's just the world we live in, where it's not illegal yet, but it's probably going to be one day, and that's going to be its whole own can of worms there. However, when looking at the concept of ResetEra being involved in this, and the fact that many of the people involved in this issue have changed their names, that they've gone as far as to attempt to shield themselves from this particular criticism and scrutiny, where it feels that ResetEra, after locking many threads talking about the subject matter and outright banning people about it, we're also seeing this pop up on our gaming on Reddit and a few other places, where a lot of other people are kind of really asking themselves a question. Is there smoke and there's fire, or is there just nothing at all? Because again, kind of like with the early days of Gamergate, when you saw the mass censorship on Reddit, it came from the fact that Zoe Quinn had talked to Patrick Klepek, who had talked to his friend, who was one of the mods on R Gaming, and they talked about this publicly. That was one of the things that led to those tens of thousands of comments being taken down, which again added to the fire. And it was one of those things that brought a lot of people in that they were like, "Ooh, I smell smoke. There must be something barbecuing over here." And of course it was, Zoe's reputation. But that being said, this is a weird case of what feels like protection. And I'm just going to be honest. It feels like there's protection at play here. When you've got these kind of accusations, which are terrible, and the response is to just shut it down, lock it out, and not address it at all, and everything else, it does come across like there is something to be had there. But when it comes to ResetEra itself, this is where things get really, really, really interesting, at least in my opinion. So ResetEra ultimately came off of NeoGaf revolting against Tyler Malka for some, if I recall, it was some kind of impropriety that they were accusing him of. I hear now NeoGaf is a much better place since these radicalized lefties left. And they've gone over to ResetEra, where they've effectively become this new NeoGaf, where oftentimes leaks and things like that get discussed at ResetEra, which then gets, talked about by these journalism websites, like these games websites, games media sites. And they don't want to sit there and say that this site that they pull so many rumors from, that they're able to use for clickbait headlines and clickbait articles, is now running a pedestry ring. Nobody wants to make that accusation. Nobody wants to be involved with that. So they're just trying to cover it up. Just like they covered up Zoe Quinn and criticism about her nearly 5 years ago, which is so weird to think that we're coming up on 5 years. There is something very rotten with the left in regards to games coverage, games media, games discussion. As a person who wants Bernie Sanders to be president in 2020, I'm calling out my side on this one. This is not a conservative versus left issue. This is the fact that we have found over the span of the last 5 years, and definitely before that, people who identify with the type of scum and villainy that appear on ResetEra, the type of people that are full authoritarian, the type of people that want nothing but control over their enemies. These kind of people ultimately prove themselves to be the worst of the worst, and oftentimes it involves sex crimes or sexual incidences involving children. This is what I don't get about people that are on the left. You get so caught up in owning the other side, so caught up in pointing the finger at everybody else, that you let the most devious, disgusting monsters make their way into your ranks. And then when you have these discussions privately, which are just that, discussions that we know of right now, there's been no accusations that have been filed. And the fact that they're trying to cover it up, and the way they're trying to cover it up, actually makes it seem like it's even worse, is only going to diminish the reputation of ResetEra, which is at some point in time going to be called out by the games media. They're not going to be able to ignore it. And they're not going to be able to ignore it if it makes its way into the mainstream media. That's the last thing that they want. If ResetEra, which has been around now for a couple years, right? It feels like it's been a couple years. If they want to save the brand that they built and maintain their access to the industry, then it's best for them to remove this cancer. It's best for them to remove this. If they on their forums are going to be banning any kind of commentary about this, they're locking threads, and any kind of sexualization of minor commentary gets shut down, which I believe it should, then that ultimately goes unchecked in their private Discord. Then that's going to look way worse. Way, way, way worse. And the type of people that come out of that circle, we've seen time and time and time again, are worse than those they criticize. They are absolutely disgusting as humans. They absolutely try to hurt people and children. And then when they get caught, there's nothing out of them. There's maybe some disavowing that you hear about, but ultimately it's always just kind of silence. Well, they're not everyone, but people who criticize Anita Sarkeesian are the worst in the world. A load of crap. Anyway, your thoughts, your opinions. I'm very curious to know where you stand on this issue. What do you think should be done? How do you think it should be handled? What do you think will handle it? I don't know. And if there's anything I got wrong, by all means, let me know. I didn't show screenshots in this because I didn't want to get my channel taken down. to be honest with you. At this point in time, YouTube is very much going after a lot of channels for a lot of different reasons. So got to choose my words very carefully and choose what I show very carefully. But as long as ResetEra becomes the dumpster fire, like for everyone to see, I'm kind of okay with it happening. So anyway, your thoughts, your opinions, let me know. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day and peace out.